Okay, hello student. This video is um, about the payroll program, the lab that we did in class. So let's gonna do that again. Okay. So I recommend you to, after watching this video, redo this program by yourself, hiding the solution. Okay. Grab a paper and write everything. Okay. Handwriting to force your brain to adjust to the logic. Okay. And remember how to declare the scanner variables, how to write the main method, a class, everything. Okay, so let's gonna read the program first. Payroll program. Write a program that determines an employee gross pay. Okay, so immediately you know that this program is about the gross pay. So you have to determine that. So that you can do is uh, write something like this. You know that your goal is determine the gross pay, right? Okay, so now the gross pay is gonna be your total. See, things about it. Gross pay is gonna be a double or an integer. It's gonna be a double, right? So our variable should be something like this. Gross pay. Okay, what's next? The gross pay is calculated as the number of hours work. Okay, multiplied by the hourly pay rate. Okay, so to compute the gross pay, you need to multiply hours worked time pay rate. Okay, so for now, we know that the input is going to be the hours work and the hourly pay rate, correct? Okay, so now let's gonna see. Okay, so we have to declare the following variable, right? Because the user is gonna enter the hours work and it's gonna enter the hourly pay rate, correct? So we need to declare another variable, right? So the variable are gonna be uh, hours work, that could be double. So the hours worked, okay, and we have another variable, right? Hourly pay rate, okay, the hourly pay rate. So it could be integer double. In this case, we are assuming that the employee can work 40.5 hours, for example, something like this. So the pay rate is gonna be equal what? The D hours worked times the hourly paid rate. Correct? Correct? This is that the problem states the gross pay is calculated as the number of hours worked multiplied by the hourly pay rate. Boom. But also it said that we have to calculate the overtime pay. Okay, overtime pay. So what's happening here? If you work less than or equal 40 hours, this is the formula, correct? To compute the gross pay. The hours that you work times the pay rate per hour, correct? So this is one formula that we're using now, correct? Okay. But what happens if the employee worked more than 40 hours? It said that we have to compute the overtime pay. Okay. How can we gonna compute the overtime pay? The overtime pay is gonna be equal what? If more than 40 hours, perfect. Okay. The employee earned 1.5 times his regular hours pay rate for all hours over 40. Okay, so for if the employee work, for example, 50 hours, correct? Here we have how many hours? We have 10 hours, right? Correct? We have here 10 hours, right? Okay, for this special 10 hours, correct? Let me move that. Let me move that here. 50. I'm gonna put 50 hours here, so much better. Okay, so for this special 10 hours, correct? How is gonna be the pay? The pay is gonna be what? The 10 hours, right? So how can you compute the 10 hours? Because you work 50 hours, correct? Minus the regular 40 hours, correct? 50 minus 40, you have 10 hours, right? Okay, you are computing now the overtime for these 10 hours. What is the pay rate? Remember, the hourly pay rate, correct? But they told us that for these special hours, you have to multiply for a factor, 1.5, correct? Okay, this is the formula for the overtime pay. The special hours, so hours over 40, it should be if she works 50 hours, 50 minus 40, the regular hours, they're gonna be the 10 hours times the hourly pay rate, but times the special factor that you have to pay for these extra hours, correct? Okay, correct. This is the overtime. Now, so this is the pay for the 40 hours, and this is the pay for the 10 hours, right? So if it worked less than 40 hours, this is the pay. If it worked for 50 hours, should be, you have to compute the overtime, right? So the overtime is like this, correct? Okay, so let's gonna code that in it means. So you know that you need the scanner, right? Import java.ut scanner, correct? Now scanner input equal new scanner system.in, correct? So we're declaring here, declaring variables. Okay, so which variable we want to declare here? Double the gross pay, initialize 1.0. We have another double, which one? The hours worked. Initialize to 0.0. The hourly pay rate, double. Right? What else? The overtime pay. Okay, double the overtime pay. Correct? Okay. Now, what is the first message that we have to display? Okay. Okay, so we have to display the message. For example, enter hours work, right? Work, okay, and then the user is gonna enter the hours work. So we're gonna receive that with the scanner, right? So input that next int, correct? Now what is next? We have to display the message enter hourly per rate. So enter hourly pay rate, correct? And we're gonna receive that in the variable. Okay, so it's gonna be correct integer, or should be much better double? Double, right? Because the container here was declared as a double, right? So here, next double, here input that next double, correct? Okay, we have the data, right? And now, what happened here? So depending of the hours, so depending of the hours work, correct? We have to take the decision is compute just the gross pay like this or compute overtime, right? Overtime pay, right? Okay, so depending of the data that we are receiving here, right? So detecting regular pay, for example. What happened? If the hour work less than or equal 40, remember, right? So what happened? Okay, so what happened if the hour work is less than 40 hours? We have the formula here, right? Okay, so the gross pay is going to be equal to the hours worked times the hourly pay rate, correct? Correct? Oh, okay, we have that. Remember, the user entered the hours work, enter the hourly pay rate, just multiply the data that you receive in your variable and you're gonna get the gross pay. Great. But now what's happening now? What happens if we have the hours work greater than 40? What is gonna happen? Okay, this case when you work more than 40 hours, correct? Overtime pay, correct? You have overtime pay, right? So what happened here? First of all, we have to compute here. If you have to compute the overtime pay, first you have to compute the gross pay for the first 40 hours, right? This formula is gonna work really well if you work less than or equal 40 hours, correct? Okay, but now in order to compute here the pay for the first 40 hours, because we now in the case that there is overtime pay, right? So this formula is going to help us to compute that in hours, but we want to compute the first 40 hours. You know that the employee worked 50 hours, so you know that he worked the regular 40 hours plus 10 hours. So your goal now is complete. Calculate the pay for these 40 hours. So the gross pay is gonna be equal what? I know that it worked the first 40 hours, right? Because he worked 50 hours. So we're gonna compute the regular gross pay for the 40 hours, correct? He or she worked 40 hours times what? The hourly pay, right? Okay. As you see, now we are computing the gross pay for the first 40 hours. So as you see, there are two cases. One, when it worked less than or equal 40 hours, this is the formula. You don't know if it worked 30, 40, 20, 39, but this is the formula. If you work 39 hours, you have the data here, times the hourly pay rate, correct? Now, if you work more than 40 hours, in this case 50 hours, you have to compute first the gross pay for the first 40 hours, right? So you know that it is worth 50, but first you have to compute the 40 hours. So 40 hours times the hourly pay rate, correct? The user is going to enter the hourly pay rate, correct? So what you did here now is compute the overtime pay, right? Okay, this is the overtime for the first 10 hours. What happened here? You are telling me that you are doing 50 minus 40, but what is 50? What is 50 hours here? It should be the hours work, right? Correct? We have 50 now, but it should be the variable the hours work, right? Because remember, we received the data in this variable. It could be 40, 30, 20, but in this case, he or she worked 50 hours. So the variable the hours work, it's holding 50 hours now, right? So remember here, you enter, please enter hours work, assuming that the user entered here 50, okay? So you receive 50, okay, in which variable? In the variable the hours work, correct? Correct, minus 40. Why are you using the variable here the hours work? Because you can receive 60, you can receive 80, whatever, right? And you're gonna hold the data here inside the hours work, correct? So here in the hours work, we're gonna hold the data that the user is entering. In this case, it's 50, but again, it could be 60, 70, 80, whatever. And then you have to subtract the first 40 hours because you're gonna pay for the extra hour, right? So now with this formula, you're gonna get the 10 hours times the hourly pay rate. Remember, the user entered the hourly pay rate, that could be 30, 20, whatever, times the special factor. Okay, so now this formula compute the gross pay, correct? The gross pay for the first 40 hours, correct? This formula compute the overtime, correct? Compute the overtime, correct? Now you have to compute the total gross pay, right? Okay, the total gross pay is gonna be the payment for the first 40 hours plus the overtime, right? Correct? Okay, so you can do something like this. Equal plus the overtime pay. Okay, what's happening here? Okay, you see the gross pay is gonna be equal the gross pay plus add overtime pay. What's happening here? So the value that you have in the gross pay plus the D over time, okay, the result of this operation is gonna be saved, is gonna be updated now in the gross pay from right to left. So whatever you have in the gross pay, you're gonna add the overtime pay, and then the result is gonna be stored in the gross pay. Why am I doing that? Because I have in the variable the gross pay the 40 hours. I have the overtime here. So if I add the gross pay that is for the first 40 hours plus the overtime, I'm gonna get the total, the gross pay, right? Correct? So this is the gross pay, the formula of the gross pay when the employee work less than or equal 40 hours, and those are the formulas when the employee work work more than 40 hours. The gross pay for the first 40 hours, the overtime, the special hour that he works, and then add those, and you're gonna get the gross pay. So this is gonna write down on our code. So if it worked more than 40 hours, correct, the gross pay is gonna be equal what? The pay for the first 40 hours, correct, times the hourly pay, right? Okay, and what is next? Now the overtime pay. The overtime pay is gonna be equal what? It's gonna be equal the numbers of hours that he or she worked, that could be 60, 50, 80 minus the regular 40 hours, correct? Now if she or he worked 80, you're gonna get 80 minus 40, 40. If she or he worked 90, you're gonna have 90 minus 40, 50. If he worked 60, 60 minus 40, 20, okay? Times the hourly pay rate times the factor, correct? Okay, and then that we did. So the new gross pay is gonna be equal the gross pay, correct? That now gross pay is this formula plus the overtime. So you compute the gross pay here, correct? For the first 40 hours. You compute the overtime for the extra hours, and then add those variables and assign to the same variable, the gross pay. Okay, we're gonna use this kind of formula during the semester. Okay, so now you can display the gross pay is correct and gross pay. So let's gonna run that. Okay. Okay, enter hours work. Assume that I work 40 hours. Hourly pay rate $30. Okay, 1,200. Perfect. Okay, let's gonna work 41 hours. Okay, pay rate 30. Okay, what happened? We have 41 hours, right? But 40 hours are normal. 40 times 30 it would be 1,200, right? And then what happened? For 1 hour, correct? It should be 41 minus 40, 1. 1 times, so we're gonna pay extra time for 1 hour, right? So the hourly pay rate is 30. 30 times 1 is 30, correct? And 30 times 1.5, correct? This is the reason why you have 1245. Okay, so the time for the 1 hour should be 30 times 16, right? So 30 times 1.5, sorry. So you're gonna have, use the calculator, 30 times 1.5, you have 45, right? So this is the reason why you have 1245. These 45 are for the extra hours. Of course, you can use, the concatenation for the dollar sign. Correct. Run again. Office hour 40. Now the payroll 40. You have 1,600. Okay. So I hope this video helped.